What's up guys, it's Daz here, but you don't really care as it's time for another DazzReviews, and I apologize for this video coming out quite late. I did actually make the entire thing before, but because of terrible audio qualities that I keep seeming to have, I decided to just scrap it and redo it again. The only problem with me being a perfectionist is I keep taking too long to make a video. Oh well. Anyway, this time we're taking on the classic fan favorite game from the GameCube era, Paper Mario: The 1,000-Year Door. And as a quick overview of how we do things here, games are judged via a score of 100, which we come to by breaking it down into 10 categories, each contributing 10 points each. These are the ones we're using this time. Got it? Good. Let's go. Paper Mario: The 1,000-Year Door has a very clear style and purpose to its visual representation. The whole gimmick of this franchise is that everything is made out of paper, as if it's a simple storybook tale. And so because of this, the game doesn't suffer from aging poorly visually, simply because it's not trying to be as realistic as possible. The whole point of the style is to immerse the player into a new world, one much unlike our own. And so there's very little to shoot down in this category. The worlds, locations, effects, and character designs are all perfectly believable together and nothing looks bad, or out of place, or unrecognizable. In fact, the only thing I could logistically think of that confused me about the look of this game was the design of the character Vivian, who I always thought had a big, ugly nose to show how she's part of the Evil Witches 3. Only years later did I realize it was just a curl of hair and she's supposed to be this beautiful one out of the three of them, because she's obviously not the bad person. But that's not something worth docking a point for, as now I see how it's supposed to look, I can't unsee it anymore. Visuals for Paper Mario: The 1,000-Year Door get a 10 out of 10. It's not HD hyperrealism, it's just a perfect paper representation. Okay, I might go as far as to say that this is probably one of the best stories Mario has ever been a part of. It's certainly one of the most extravagant and daring of the last 30 odd years. The general synopsis is Peach invites Mario to join her on a treasure hunt over on Rogueport. Soon afterwards, she is kidnapped and Mario has to explore the lands in search of the 7 crystal stars to find the treasure and eventually Peach herself. But going deeper, there's actually a lot of in-depth story going on in every corner. Each crystal star is given a chapter, which places Mario in a different location, each with their own story arc which Mario must traverse and resolve. And the variety between each of the chapters is astounding and certainly keeps the player entertained throughout the game. One minute you're out slaying a dragon who holds the treasure and a friend's dad, next you're trying to cure a town of a gloomy curse, but not before being cursed and betrayed yourself. And as Mario is going along his adventure, we're given snippets of other stories occurring simultaneously. Between chapters, we get to see how Peach is doing. We learn that she's being held captive by the X-Nauts, who are also after the Crystal Stars, but is gaining assistance from their supercomputer tech, who is allowing her access to information and contact with Mario, as long as she does what he tells her. This goes on to add both some nice memories in some places, sure, as well as allows us for more world building, as we're learning more about our main enemies from behind enemy lines. And though these sections aren't action-based, they're still fun. Going invisible in their lair and sneaking past the guards is something I just always find exciting in the game. And then there's Bowser, who also shows up in the game. In his case, he's learned of Peach's kidnapping and plans to take revenge himself, and later conducts a hunt of his own for the Crystal Stars. This all works fantastically, as it feels like you're part of a much bigger story as you progress through the game, especially as paths cross between each of the characters. And then we get to the ending, where Mario goes to the darkest territory he's ever endured. From Peach we learn that Tech has learned some horrible information, and tells her indirectly through a quiz. Soon afterwards, he's shut down by Grodus, the X-Naut leader, and Peach is taken away. Mario meanwhile grabs the 7th crystal star and opens the 1,000-Year Door, unaware of the troubles that lie beyond it. Reaching the end, Mario faces off against Grodus, who is then also flattened by Bowser, who finally lands in the right location. And after beating Bowser, Mario reaches Peach at the very back, where Grodus activates the treasure, a 1,000-year-old demon. This demon needs a vessel, which Grodus has just provided with Peach. Cue terrifying possession, doom of the land, and one of the hardest boss fights I've ever taken part in. The story in 1,000-Year Door is nothing short of perfect. It's just so in-depth and fun to be a part of. And I didn't even go into all the intricacies with reoccurring baddies and partners and the outstanding writing and comedy squeezed into every cranny of the game. Story gets a 10 out of 10. Now, as we just said, Mario ends up going to a lot of different locations, and each one comes with its own atmosphere and musical motif. And one would think that this would mean that the soundtrack of this game would be over the top lengthy and potentially forgettable because of the sheer bulk of musical content it hosts, and yet, this isn't the case. The 1000-Year Door does a great job of making almost every track in the game an absolute masterpiece that's hard to forget. I could play you any track from this game and I bet you'd recognize it in a heartbeat. It's just that good. Each villain has a distinctive theme you can't help but bob your head to. The different locations successfully bringing in that atmosphere intended for each one. The boss fights are dramatic and intense, and even those little tunes from minigames or extras are fun and memorable. Everything this game's soundtrack attempted to achieve has been nailed perfectly in every case. In trying to think of something to nitpick about the soundtrack, the only thing that really comes to mind is Grodus' theme and how his battle theme doesn't deviate much from it at all. And that's hardly worth docking a point for. To truly grasp how this game's soundtrack is, all you have to do is merely listen to the main theme. It's triumphant and upbeat, and suddenly surprises you with something extra and fantastic and unforgettable. Though I never did quite understand why so much of the soundtrack has a sound effect that sounds like a rubber duck or something. Was it a developer joke or a challenge? Are my ears deceiving me? Either way, this game's soundtrack cannot be faulted. Music gets a 10 out of 10. So listing off mechanics, first things first, we have the aspect of battling enemies alongside your partner, who come with a variety of their own attacks to help and aid you on your quest against the baddies. As you take on each chapter, you get a new partner, each with something new to add. Pretty standard, pretty nice. In battle, you get the additional task to use timing to assist your offense and improve your defense, as well as interact with the audience members to either please or punish them. Out of battle, you can use your partner's abilities to access new areas or interact with the world in new ways. Mario himself can earn upgrades as well, allowing for more mobility through certain barriers as well as new moves in battle. Along the way, you can cook items for newer items, collectible shine sprites for partner upgrades, and star pieces to buy new badges and thus new battle options. You can talk to fortune tellers to find collectibles or the way forward, as well as fill out your tattle log of each enemy for a completionist satisfaction and to learn about your enemies. Overall, there's a lot of different mechanics and they all work very effectively together to improve the variety of gameplay options open to the player. They're fun, easy to learn, and hard to master. Mechanics get a nice and simple 10 out of 10, because they're not really flawed. Paper Mario the 1000-Year Door is not the perfect game. It does have flaws, and this is one of them. The level design is great, but it's not perfect. It's nice that this game is not 100% a matter of go right until you reach the end. There's a decent amount of variety in the direction you must go to progress, and sometimes you're simply moving around the same area to move on, which is fine, but something that is a bit of an unfortunate theme in some places is backtracking. Unnecessary backtracking for the sake of it. It's not crazy common, but people especially highlight it in Chapter 4, where you must go through the whole forest, then go back through it into town, then go through it again to get something in the steeple, then go back to town, then chase the villain back into the steeple. It's a lot of back and forth that isn't the most fun for most players. You also have a bad case of this in Chapter 7, where in order to progress the story you must traverse to all of the previous chapter locations in search of one character who is travelling from place to place themselves. I imagine it was placed to show the player just how far they've come on all of their travels, but at the same time, it's boring. And if you're unaware of the shortcuts with the blue pipes, it becomes awfully tedious to some players. It's not a disaster though, just a big irk for many players. Level design gets an 8 out of 10. Alright, doing good so far, but how good are the actual controls? Well, when in the overworld, Mario has two main controls, press A to jump and press B to hammer, and of course, move around with the control stick. This is pretty basic, so you can't really go wrong, though as you progress, Mario gains more abilities. Press A in midair to spin jump, hold B and spin the control stick around to swing the hammer, hold R to go into paper mode, hold R and spin the control stick to roll into a tube. I personally really like the variety of control options that go into this overworld screen. You also have slightly different controls for plane mode, in which you have to dip the control stick side to side to control lift. And though the other paper modes are much more basic, in that you have to just move around, it all allows for a great bout of variety for the overworld, which is very much needed considering the length of the game. There's also the D-pad buttons which allow you to quickly skip to the different tabs of the start menu, which is pretty nice. When in battle mode, you choose to attack via an interactive menu, but rather than just pressing A on an attack and watching it, you can interact with the buttons in order to adjust the impact of your attack as well. This then allows for the incorporations of timings at the end of action commands to ensure maximum damage. And as you earn crystal stars, you gain extra special moves which allow more variety to the attack controls, now having you press almost every button on the controller in a random order, or using the control stick to visually draw on the enemy. Not to mention, you can use good timing to minimize the amount of damage you take in battle as well by pressing the A or B button just before taking damage to soften the blow. This massive variety in controls allows for one of the most interactive and immersive battle mechanics ever in a Mario game. And over to Peach, there actually isn't a lot. But I would argue that doesn't really need to be. For the most part, she just moves around and presses A. But that's fine, it's not part of her character to be full of variety. And then over to Bowser, with him you can take part in a classic 2D level, with Bowser as the protagonist now. And this works pretty well. It certainly doesn't feel blocky, though it doesn't quite play out as smoothly as the 2D Mario games. Regardless, the controls for the Thousand Year Door are nothing short of amazing, and things like timings are very well tweaked to the point that nothing really feels like it's going wrong. There's an immense amount of variety that perfectly balances new and challenging, without ever frustrating the player in cheap ways. Any mistakes made by the player can be attributed entirely to themselves, as the game almost never falters on its own. Controls get a 10 out of 10. In Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, there are around 20 different intense bosses for Mario to face, and though the line between what counts as a mini-boss and just a strong enemy is kinda blurred, that still means there's an intense number of memorable battles to face. And they are memorable. These are some of the best bosses I would argue Mario has to ever face. Sure, you've got a trio of dragon enemies to take care of and you've got your classic baddie rivals, but some of these bosses are so creative and fun to play against. How about a ghostly guy who scans you and replicates you to attack you with your oats? How about a giant blobby enemy who can transform at will? Or what about a very beefed up guy who can constantly upgrade himself to put you at a disadvantage? And how about a shadow queen who is trying to destroy the entire world and has your princess captive, who at her prime can become absolutely invincible and can deliver a devastating attack, almost wiping you out one hit every time? Who can also grab HP from the souls of the audience watching and seems to never give up? There's really nothing I can fault with the bosses of this game either. On top of how they fight, their characters and their dialogue puts them into something that's completely unrivaled in any other Mario game. Bosses again get a 10 out of 10. So this category is all about what it brings to the franchise it belongs in, and I'm going to say that this game handles two franchises, the Mario franchise as a whole as well as just the Paper Mario franchise specifically. So, does it bring a lot? Oh yeah. So firstly, the actual gameplay format of running around in an overworld and fighting in turn-based combat isn't new. The first Paper Mario covered pretty much all of that. And actually a lot of aspects of this game come from the first. But something that is new for the Paper Mario franchise is the act of utilizing the background as an additional platform into some areas or secrets. Though it's not a giant mechanic, it's a nice little thing that was never done before this point. On a bigger scale, the intermissions between chapters are entirely new, and this has a lot more to offer. Not only giving us more variety in gameplay with both Peach and Bowser, but also giving us much more story and character development, as well as giving us a fun time to just watch everything unfold. And beyond that, there's only one other major thing that I can think of that Paper Mario didn't already hold: the audience mechanic. Though battles play out very similarly to the first game, something that really pulls the Thousand Year Door ahead is the fact that each battle has an audience viewership to them, which is then utilized for more interactivity in battle. Whenever you impress the audience with a move, they will give you star power, which allows you to use your special moves when enough is built up. Therefore, the more audience members you have and the better you perform, the better things go for you. And if you mess up on your moves, then some members will jump away, docking you all that power. Additionally, each audience group is different, and the different characters that appear can affect how the battle plays out. Sometimes Luigi will appear, which is just a nice little reference as he doesn't really do anything outstanding as usual, but sometimes enemies will be watching you, and they can throw a variety of items which may hurt you unless you either time a move to get out of the way, or press X to attack them back. Maybe you'll have a fan too, who may throw something helpful like items or coins. It's a nice extra sense of interactivity for the battle system, and you can just feel the tension when 50% of the audience are friendly punies and 50% are X-Nauts. It's also nice as some battles also interact with the audience in new ways, though often not in their favour. Hooktail, for example, will surprise the audience by gulping up a few of them and then continuing the battle on their chairs. And sometimes a Shy Guy will pop up on stage and interact with something behind the curtain. Maybe a spotlight will fall on you and make you zappy. Sometimes the background of the battles will just fall, or random water will spray you and refresh you. Maybe a fog machine will blur the stage, or you'll get frozen or burned randomly. It all adds to keep a bit of variety in every battle you fight. And then thinking of the Mario franchise as a whole, this game adds tons to the characters of the Mario universe. Just simply through the designs of every NPC in the game, you can see a vast variety in how each species is presented and how they stand out in comparison to each other. Not to mention the actual writing and how they interact with each other. Though the Thousand Year Door takes a lot from its predecessor, the game does a lot to add something new to both Paper and Mario. On top of that, it's okay for it to be similar to the original game, as it's not dying to be drastically new. It's simply expanding the Paper Mario franchise further and keeping faithful to its roots, for the first and last time in the series. Innovation gets a 10 out of 10. Alright, time for extras, where we look beyond the bog standard gameplay and look to see what fun little things are in the game just for the player's joy. Well, for a start, there's a whole cooking mechanic used to upgrade many of the food items you find along the way. Each item gives a unique recipe, and later in the game you can unlock the ability to cook multiple items together to allow for a vast degree of options for potential recipes by the end of the game. This is a fun and simple little extra that allows for experimentation and guesswork on the player's behalf if they choose to pursue this. Additionally, there's the Trouble Center that highlights a variety of side quests for Mario to take part in to make the world just a little bit better, and possibly earn from it himself. These are just fun world-building aspects of the game that allow you to get to know a little more of the NPCs you may have otherwise just ran past for the sake of adventure. There's also all the collectibles hidden around the game, such as Shine Sprites, which can be used to upgrade your partners, Star Pieces to sell off to earn badges, and badges themselves, which give you extra abilities in battle if you choose to use them. Then there's the casino area, where you can play mini-games to earn points to buy unique items. These mini-games take on challenges for the paper modes Mario can earn and allow for a nice little moment to relax and or try to get the best score. I also just find it really satisfying to race against a giant crowd of NPCs in that one paper game. You also get the lottery, which no one ever wins ever, the Glitz Pits battling system, if completing it once in Chapter 3 wasn't enough for you, and the Pit of 100 Trials, which has you digging deeper into a 100 level pit against progressively stronger enemies without a chance to save or heal. You can also fill up your tattle log by tattling on every enemy in the game to see their information. Yeah, I think it's fair to say there's a lot of little extras that have been put into the game for your entertainment, and not just to pass the story along. Extras definitely gets a 10 out of 10. And finally, polish. Does the Thousand Year Door hold up well against bugs and general tweakings? Actually, yes, very well in fact. The game runs very smoothly and works as fluidly as it did. I literally can't recall any glitches that come to mind when I think about this game. The biggest hitch I can really think of is occasionally pausing the game may take like a second longer than expected, but beyond that, you don't phase through walls or floors, at least you're not supposed to. Hitboxes and timings are easy to predict, and nothing really takes you out of the immersive world that makes you think it's not supposed to happen. So I can't not give polish a 10 out of 10 as well. Huh. Alrighty then, putting together all 10 categories, we get our final score for Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door as being a 98 out of 100 game. One of the best ever on the channel. Not too surprising honestly, it's a fantastic masterpiece of a game. Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door nails its style of game and doesn't pull any punches on themes and experimentation. It stands out by a mile. Every character looks vastly different to anything seen in a Mario game, both in regards to design and writing. The mechanics, minigames, and extras thrust into this game make it an endless bout of fun for all players. The story is something unrivaled in a Mario game after all these years, and I struggle to find a single fluidity flaw throughout the entire journey. The only issue I can depict is the occasional occurrence of backtracking on the path. It's a lot like the first game, and that's not really a bad thing, as it wants to be exactly that. It's trying to be Paper Mario, but better, and I'd say it wrapped that goal up perfectly. Thanks for watching. If you're interested in seeing more from me, then let me know by subscribing or suggesting a future review you'd like to see. I'm currently in the mindset of covering GameCube games, because that's what I want to do right now. And hey, if you really like me and the style of review I do over here, then consider following me on Twitter or supporting me on Patreon. The more the merrier. Anyway, it's about time I ended off here. Sorry for the delays once again, but my name's been Daz. You didn't really care, and I'll see you in a bit.